Hey guys, this video is going to walk you through my setup of Vantage with Spacelift, and I will also talk through a typical enterprise grade deployment. Uh, it partially reflects on the work I'm doing for larger companies here in UK and what kind of setup these companies usually tend to go for. Specifically when it comes to releases. And I have built like this over a couple of days now, and here's the result. So we have dev environment. It's a dev environment URL, and we have bubbles floating. So that's our app, and app consists of two parts. We have front end, which is Node.js, running version 1.0, and we have backend, which is running 2.0, and that's our dev version. Here we have UAT version, and so what happened is someone who was looking at the UAT, he didn't really like the bubbles or whatever, and the staging environment is still running 1.1, and obviously there's also production version over there. Let me bring the prod in. So the prod, okay, we'll find it later. Okay, now the way how this is set up is I have this GCP, and for all the environments, okay, so for prod we have the API backend, but not the front end. So this is sitting in one account. Typically our organizations will split it into multiple accounts with the permissions and all that. Okay, but for this one we do have okay. Yeah, so we have version 1.1 sitting and showing us green bubbles. Cool. Okay, but no API yet, so it's something we need to work on. Next, the companies tend to think in terms of state and permissions. So typically you're gonna have two teams, the first working with the code, and I decided to put everything in a single repo, but you're gonna have many repos within an organization. They could be a mono repo. In my case, I built a mono repo, and this is how it's structured. So I have API. API is written in Rust. So there's a source in here. It's a super simple API. What it does is just returns color gray unless this is overridden through the environment. Okay. And then this is compiled into a Docker file, and I built a two-stage Docker file. So this is just to improve caching and the pipelines. You will find workflows in here that build the backend. It's also taking advantage of that cache. Okay, cool. Once this is built, we are pushing in here. So we have artifact registry. This is where our images live. So that's a pretty standard. And images are mutable. That means once API is deployed, started with a version, it should be an immutable version, which means we won't be able to change it anymore. The cache is immutable, and it's used to speed up our builds. Once again, this is pretty standard kind of the setup. Now, let's look at once I merge this pipeline, let me go to actions here. And a lot of companies are actually building deployment to different environments using GitHub Actions. This is not very reliable. That's not what the large companies go for. They're either gonna have like Kubernetes with Argo CD and keep the state in a separate Argo CD repository, or they will use some sort of manual promotion mechanism, and that's exactly what we're going for. So this release over here, You see the API 020 was merged and released, and this got released only to well, obviously the image got tagged and pushed, but also we released so that we tagging this the commit, and we deploy to dev. After dev, we're not doing anything to it, and to be honest, Git actions in many cases would not have the permissions to deploy. And next, let's look inside our stacks, and this is the setup in Spacelift. So I haven't used Spacelift myself before. I used many times in Terraform or Terraform Cloud. But this would usually have the state isolation. So the production state and the staging state, they must not be accessible by with the same kind of permissions. And in here, yes, we list all the stacks, but the, the team who can access this is typically its production team or platform team. Developers wouldn't be able to access this. Okay. Also, I wanted to show you kind of the separation of the infrastructure stack. So under infra, we have two parts. We have the base stack, and this typically will live in a separate repository under, once again, different teams will push into it. And that's the one which provisions our stacks. Right, so that creates the Spacelift stacks along with some tagging for the teams components. So tagging is super important. That's for FinOps and observability, stuff like that, and also for reporting any faults. So if the infrastructure has been deployed and it has the vulnerability, we need to know to which team we need to route the defect, who needs to respond to that. Okay. What else can I show you? Right, so the base is deployed once. Actually, there is a stack here we have for the base. What is it? Okay, that's one base stack. And let's say that the platform team governs that. And they would typically have, so this is a production base stack. If they having pre-production, that would be in entirely different environment. So we'll target an entirely different account, and nobody would be able to deploy to that pre-production stack. So once again, the parity of accounts is tricky. In our case, we have 3 environments for dev teams, but sometimes we also have extra environments for the platform teams where they just test their own stuff. Yeah, but this is production grade. That's why it's just one. Okay. What else we have? So all the stacks in here, they're configured. What do we have? Settings. Still learning this UI. Oh yeah, we go settings. I think under behavior. Okay, so yeah, so for that we have auto deploy. For production stacks, we would not. So production would require one extra. Okay, that's why this unconfirmed. Okay, and we need to, I believe, locate the run, and this needs to be confirmed before this page comes up. Yeah, but okay, so that's normal operation. Now, as you can see, I have to go through many different places. So look into many different applications. The UI is super complex in here for a regular user. So all of these features, they are great. They're awesome, like policies, but typically we need to have kind of like a very operational focused UI, which teams would operate. So sometimes the people who design the stacks are not the same people who authorize releases and stuff like that. And that's one kind of where the Vantage comes in, right? So I built this Vantage app, and first of all, the first screen over here is the list of the apps. Okay, so it pulls the apps which we have deployed, and it tracks the application version across multiple environments. I could have structured this screen slightly differently. I didn't spend enough time on this because it's just very basic implementation, which I did while fixing some of the other issues in Vantage. But anyways, just to illustrate, we have dev, which is both healthy and also running the newest version, which is 0.22. And same the UAT. Staging is behind the version. That's because, as I said, someone in UAT discovered the bug, and we need to promote the new bug fix. So that's what we're gonna simulate. On the front end side, so let's see, we have 3 environments and 1 is absent. Alright, okay, so this is absent. And Vantage, so Vantage allows me to define the columns over here, and this stuff is actually coming from a wrapper. The Vantage has the concept of data sources, and then here we have 2. The one is the GraphQL for Spacelift, so I'll show that in a minute as well. And the second one is the command line. First, let me start with the command line. If I bring in this, so that's the Python script, which kind of like bundles all the stuff together in normal corporate team fashion. And now we're gonna have like this built and deployed, and then as you can see there are some command line scripts like promote from one environment to another. So this works as a backbone for the UI. Vantage does allow you to write a scripting, but they are pretty basic. And besides, this usually the team already have script like that, so we just need to wrap it into the UI. Yeah, so in here we can list our apps, list our ends, list deployments and PRs, and that's exactly what I see here. So I can see the apps, I can click on deployments. Okay, we see which deployment environment are there. This one needs approval. What happened with deployments? Pull requests. Okay, no open pull request. That's great. And on the bottom here, we also have integration with Spacelift API, and it's augmented, right? So we're pulling list of stacks. So in a way, this is the same thing as this screen here. However, we're focusing and we fine tune exactly what we need, right? So let me explain. So that's the name of the stack, right? So it's the same. Then in here we have teams, right? So we don't have concept of teams, and obviously Slack is a very generic tool. It allows you to do it through labels, and that's exactly what we're using. So we have a label for the backend teams, platform teams, and the front end. Right? So we know who is responsible for this specific stack, and this is the component, and this is the environment. Base doesn't have an environment, so it's like all environment in there. Okay, what else we see here? The state last apply, so that's pretty important. We can, sort by the column over here, see when the last deploy happened, whether it has drifted or not. Drifted is a paid, so it requires you a premium account in Spacelift, but we can pull it over here. I think it's a pretty cool feature to monitor your stacks and see whether they have drifted or not. That's pretty, for larger organization, that's amazing, and it will be surfaced and seen here. This indicates whether it's auto deployed. So obviously prod is not, and also base is not auto deployed. Yeah, so these are production level stacks, they're not auto deployed. Source comes from the location, so in our case it's all the same repository, and underneath there are 2 bases. So we have base, and app is pretty much the template we use for all the stacks, but they have different configuration. And there are some other stuff that we pull from the API. It's not really needed, but it's there if I've hidden a bunch of it, but it's possible to retrieve it. You can see on the bottom here, when I select something, this is what we call a status page. So for instance, the front end, let's say UIT, there is a URL here. I can also click open and opens the correct stack for me. And in here, this is an unconfirmed, so let me click that and I can confirm. So that's a pretty simple way how I can just go and confirm. The other benefit is that Vantage UI is like really good at refreshing. So it pulls the data from multiple APIs and shows you exactly what's going on. And it's finished. And I can go to runs as well. I can see the runs. So yeah, that's great. And obviously all the information here. I can clean up the columns. I can, in fact, let me show you how these columns are built. Yeah, so usually I don't edit them myself. I have my AI agent modify them. But let's say I want to change color of the label here. So this is the apps page, and it just lists these different columns. Also lists relation. Yeah, so it says this is a grid. There's name, there's kind, there's stack, image, feature flags, whatever. Right, and there's observation script. Yeah, I haven't written any of that, so that's all built by the AI. Okay, what we want to see is what is it? We need a label, right? It could be on the page, but it could also be inside a table. Oh, right. I'm looking on the wrong place. So this is the stacks. That's the stacks. Okay, so there we go. Yellow label. Let me change that to, I don't know which. Let's do blue, right? And as soon as I save, it updates this. Okay, if I click undo, save, goes back. And as when AI makes any modification, it's just as fast in its instance. So it's super reactive. I only saved into the file, and this is a Z. It's a separate application, a separate IDE. As soon as I save it, it reacts here. But also more importantly, it doesn't reset where you are. Maybe just some bits, but it tries to be super conservative about what it refreshes. Okay, now we have deployed this page actually, so front end should be up and running. Let's see, front end. PRD. Interesting. So it says finished, but nothing was actually deployed. All right, that's a minor thing. Okay, now let's do the interesting bit. So Spacelift UI, as I said, we're pretending there is a bug in the API. And what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna go in here, click on cargo, and I want to release a fix, right? So I'm only gonna change the version, I'm not gonna change anything else. Okay, so it will create a new branch from me. PAM version, perfect. So let's do that. This is the dev environment. So you see the version is 2.0 right now. I haven't built ephemeral environment. So sometimes teams would want to create ephemeral environment. When the PR is open, they have a custom UI, which they can click this. It's possible to build actually with the setup, but and I have some usual approaches how to do this consistently and keep the usage low. But right, so let's look at this. So oh yeah, this didn't execute, and the reason why is because they actually were not modified. Right? So if you If you look here, then the front end and infra have not been modified, so we skipped the CI. The API did rebuild though, and it ran for 19 seconds. And that's because of all the caching we're doing. So we restore the cache here and we rebuild, and it's super fast. The teams, what I've seen in companies, the CI pipelines run up to 1 hour in some cases, and can quite often use a little bit of cleanups. Okay, so we still 2.0, nothing has been released. However, all the checks pass. Let's release. We merge that. So we're using the commit message consistent with that. Okay, and action. So that's our release pipeline. It's going to detect the changes and it's going to release what's supposed to be released. And in this case, it only releases the API, pushes the image. Okay. Yeah, we're using MISA action, so that's kind of a more hardcore dependency management utility which operates at the level of a project. So if I have multiple projects, I can declare dependencies in each separately, and also transfers to GitHub. Allows me to easier control not only the remote dependencies but also of the tooling that is installed on my local machine. Cool. What we're doing here, so we're using the remote cache, and yeah, the build is pretty much was cached, but there was a little bit of pushing. Oh no. Right, so yes, I didn't relog. That's my bad. That was a problem, and I messed up. So this was messed up. The thing didn't push. Do we have a new version here? No, it hasn't been pushed. So now we have what is called a broken main, and normally this can create an incident if it stays like that for a while, because this will block all the teammate releases, so nobody can release, and that's pretty nasty. If something like that happens, then typically teams will look to fix that immediately, or they can revert the last change on the main branch. Actually, there are a couple of other changes, but that's the that's the problem we had. Should we also need yeah, so beauty of Vantage actually is that I can simply commit the project to Git, and we don't have to synchronize it in any way. Okay, so I've got my locked fixed now. Let's see how we can how quickly we promote that. These are some of the other changes that were unrelated. So only interested in this. Okay. Oh, and yeah, so it says we need to bump version as well. Okay, fine, let's do that. Oops. So I'll go build. Okay, what's another thing I wanted to show you? So in here we have a number of optional steps. Usually we will create a protection for the branch, which means if crucial steps failing, we are not going to merge. And the way how we working around optional steps is by creating conclusion steps, which will fail if any of the dependencies fail. And when we're protecting the branch, we will include only this last step, and it will just look after that the optional steps are executed, and if they are, then they don't fail. All right, so this has been running. Good. Cool, awesome. Yeah, this actually probably can be cleaned up. There's no reason to run CI on main. This shouldn't run. Nobody cares. Okay, deploy. So that should now push inside here. Now what? Is that a node? Yeah, that was a node. Scares me. Okay, for some reason we're rebuilding more than we should. Yeah, the cache wasn't that as effective. And these things they need to be polished and fine-tuned. If in my experience the cache grow too big and then it's becoming less efficient because it takes minutes to restore. And yeah. Awesome. Okay, so now let's check. The release should be here. Yes, so yeah, we skipped 0 to 1 and there is 0 to 2. It was I think it was created. I'm not sure what this untagged one means. Created one now. Okay, fine. Now let's look what's going on with this. Yeah, so you can see this is applying. This automatically is displayed. Yeah, nice. And under apps, what do we have? So the API. Okay, cool. And it's switched to 0 to 2. Also, I can do check the running version, and it reports. Yes, awesome. Okay, cool. So now this is the backend is in here in dev, and it seems to work fine. Let's promote that to next environment, and we're using this custom script, and we're promoting that. And what it's gonna do, it is going to create a new like kind of stack in here. So that yes, the UAT is now being released. So this is happening behind the scene. I don't actually need to go into these details, and that's just deploying over here. Okay, cool. Version 0.22 deploying. And I think I can run the check and still show me the older version, which is great. Yeah, so this is kind of, it shows me unhealthy when the version is supposed to be deployed, but it's responding with the incorrect version. Obviously in GCP, there is no process of unhealthy period I believe, because it should just go from one into another. I might be wrong though, so I might have configured those cloud runs. Okay, and yeah, dev 022 and UAT have switched to the correct bubble. Okay, let's do staging next. Staging is behind. Okay, let's promote this one. And while this is promoting, I'm going to talk about the second kind of form of Vantage. So you see this as a UI, and it's really easy to test, really easy to play with it. But what we actually want to achieve with Vantage is that once you build your app, once you have created the necessary controls, so you, for instance, I can promote, but I can't manually change stuff, and that's exactly what I want to achieve. Once this is like that, I should be able to deploy the facade API, right? So it's kind of still connects to the necessary backends. As you can see, there is a version just switched to 2.2 and we're green, which is nice. Yeah, so once we're promoting them, once we have implemented stuff in the UI, we could just transfer them into the API, and the APIs can then have a custom UI built around them. And nowadays it's quite easy to build a custom front end. You just vibe code it. But when it comes to backend, it needs to be consistent and it needs to be super stable. And that's exactly what Vantage offers you. So the whole thing is super stable. As you can see, it refreshes correctly, and then whatever is on the front end is not as important. It's not as critical, because the backend is kind of let's promote the last one to prod. Yes, it's just the backend is already curating and is being like this watchdog for the crucial parts of your application, so you don't expose your things like secrets inside your Git. You don't expose your space. So this one, Spacelift. Yeah, you don't expose Spacelift as well. And let's look at stacks actually. What happened with prod? Yeah, it's unconfirmed. App? What does app say? Yeah, it says deploying. Yeah, okay. So that's all right. That's fine. Unconfirmed. And obviously we need to confirm the prod. Let's see how fast it's. Oh yeah, we had some problem here, which I'm not sure why. Let me quickly check. Front end. Yeah, because it didn't deploy at all. Yeah, fine. We do have the API though, yeah, so we can verify with this. Cool. Okay, let's confirm that. What is this? Confirmation. There, confirm. And then let's come back to this one. And the production API should go to 2.2 version. Yeah. So yeah, what I was saying, the API is secure, the API is super robust, tested, and then you can either vibe code the front end, or you can integrate it with your custom enterprise system and the custom approval mechanism. It's up to you. Everything is super flexible. What I haven't showed you is ability to change colors. I thought I would finish, but it's kind of like late. I don't want to keep working on that for the rest of my weekend. However, just in a few words, here's what we would need to do. The backend. Let's go for this one. So our revision, that's the revision we just have deployed. It has this app color green, right? And we should be able to switch it from green to blue. Now, in different organizations are approaching feature flags differently. My usual approach is that I want to feed them into either YAML files in Argo CD or into Terraform files over here. So where this is actually coming from, it is a part of the stack. So if I go to API prod and then look at, yeah, so this is like very difficult to navigate for me. So one of these things, maybe under settings, we have, yeah, this, and yeah, that's another thing. So this shouldn't be main. We should focus on a specific tag of our infrastructure, because if someone is to deploy change to the infrastructure in this branch, it's gonna wreck our production stack. Yeah, we don't want that. So it needs to be fully pinned. That's another thing to look after. Yes, but where do we have variables? Yeah, this is not very obvious. Oh, there we go. Maybe this. Yeah, this is super confusing, because I thought environment is more like prod and staging, and it's and variables. Nice. Do we have the one which says green? Does our file actually have one? Okay, it looks like it's, I'm not sure where it's coming from. Yeah, but that's okay, so it needs a little bit of work. So somehow we should be able to easily switch those feature flags. And not only we want to switch them, but in some cases we would like to have like multiple revisions. You see here, like when we manage traffic, we could split traffic, and so we can like manage multiple revisions. This allows us to do canary deployments or experiments, yeah, which is equally important, where we have like a small portion of traffic hitting the endpoint, which has a different value for the feature flag. And in theory, we can code this all up correctly with the stack, with the stacks and Spacelift, or this can be implemented using a custom feature configuration endpoint, which would be governed by some other service. So there are ways around it, but it's one of the features that the larger companies would find absolutely necessary for the data experiments. All right, this video is getting too long. The Vantage I've used to build all this is a standard version that it says dev because it's of like the local build, but that's actually the version 0.36 which is released. If you want to try it locally, go to Vantage, and it should be okay. Maybe it's not released. It should be released in a second. Yeah, I'll show you how I'm actually doing the Vantage releases. Yes, that's the Vantage release, and 35. Let's go. Blah. Publish the release, and the pipelines are doing the rest. That's it. That's how I'm releasing Vantage. Should update the page, should sign it, and auto update will let you know when this version is ready to go. All right, that concludes my video. Thank you for watching, and have a lovely rest of the weekend.